Hello, well, welcome everyone. I'm Steve MacLellan, the financial engineer, proud owner of Design Your Future Financial Services, where we help you grow, control, and keep what you build instead of giving away to taxes, fees, losses, and the unknown. And today we got an awesome show here. We got Sean Meister, really LinkedIn's unofficial Nova Scotia guy. We're going to share his journey, where he's been, where he's at today, and where he wants to go tomorrow. And he's going to share his secrets to his successes. We're going to talk a little bit about the failures too, how he got over that. And really, one of the things I'm really excited about, he's taken something that's been kind of a thorn in Nova Scotia's side, kind of a very negative aspect of Nova Scotia, and he's really turned it into a positive. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean, welcome to the show. Sean, how are you doing today?
Not too bad, Steve. Thanks so much for having me.
I heard you just got back from Ontario late last night.
Yeah, I was up in Ontario visiting in-laws after some work travel up in Montreal. Got in 3 a.m. this morning, so we'll see how long I last with answering these questions where they make sense.
I appreciate you being here, and I know that people watching this will get a lot of value. I've been becoming a fan of yours, watching you on LinkedIn, watching you grow and celebrate Nova Scotia. But just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a proud Nova Scotian. I was actually born up in Nunavut, but moved back home to Nova Scotia when I was 3. I grew up in farming, so my background was beef cattle, forestry down in New Ross, Nova Scotia. So spent my life down on a family farm there. Went off to university at Acadia, and then followed the story of so many other people, sort of in my generation and many before. Wasn't a lot of opportunity for me, so I moved west. I went to Ontario, then to Alberta, then back to Ontario, and after 10 years away, 5 of which I was trying to get home, I finally came home in 2017. I've been trying to make the best of it ever since I got back.
Oh, wow. That sounds like we had a very similar path, except, I wasn't born in Nunavut. I was born in Antigonish, and I went to a much better university where we used to beat Acadia about 50% of the time in sports.
I don't think we want to get into that on this, do we? Because I have things I could say.
My wife's from Acadia there too, or went to Acadia, I should say. So you're kind of like Hank Snow. You've been everywhere. What drew you back home? What drew you back to Nova Scotia?
For me, it was one of those things. I mean, my story is not that much different than anyone else. I didn't really want to leave. So when you don't really want to leave, then you want to come back. So when I went out west, and I'm thankful for having gone out, started my career, met great people, got great experience, everything like that. But it was pretty early on that I realized that I wanted to go home, and I wanted to try to make an impact on the province, because if I'm going to be honest, I was kind of pissed off that I had to leave. It was a thorn in my side for a long time. So like I say, about 5 of the 10 years I was networking. I knew I wasn't going to get something right away, so I spent years virtually networking with people, getting to know them, because I knew that was the ultimate goal, was to get home. And then honestly, we finally pulled the trigger on it when my daughter was born, and we were living in Hamilton, Ontario. We were looking at what daycare costs were going to be. We were looking at the life that was going to have there, and we just said, no, we gotta make this happen. And it was just kind of funny that the second we thought that, the perfect opportunity presented itself, and I jumped and went for it. So it was never really the decision to come home. It was just waiting for the opportunity to come home.
Right. And when you say the perfect opportunity, what was that? What got you back to come back to the East Coast?
The perfect job, it was actually with the government. It was with Nova Scotia Business Inc., and the job was about essentially selling Nova Scotia. The job was helping the economic future of the province. My particular role was all about focusing on international partnerships to help build the reputation of Nova Scotia, and help build a network of Nova Scotians living abroad to help in trade and investment. So I mean, it was just it just checked all the boxes. It was a move from communications into economic development, and economic development is just something that, when you're forced to move away, you're like, I want to help make it so that no one else has to move away if they don't want to. And economic development was perfect.
That's awesome. And you mentioned earlier being pissed off about leaving. And listen, I fully understand that. I loved growing up in Antigonish, and had lots of fun in Nova Scotia. And yeah, there wasn't a lot of opportunity for me when I graduated. I remember I was lucky enough to have a job offer, but the pay was a third of anywhere else, right? And like you, left with odds thinking that the Maritimes was the home, but the brain drain was real. I know a lot of Maritimes that left, and they don't always come back. We always think they do, but a lot of them stay. They become very successful elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
How do you turn that brain drain, that negativity, where a lot of our good, hardworking entrepreneur people leave? How do you turn that into a positive?
So for me, it was pretty obvious from early on that it's not actually a brain drain. Because when you look at that, it's an automatic negativity. And sure, yes, you lose good people that can feel like it's not a good thing, but we have the highest concentration of universities in the country. We're churning out amazing people all the time. It's actually, I consider it it's a gained asset when somebody goes out into the world and succeeds, because that's actually, if you can activate that community, if you can bring that community together, you've essentially created a second population. You've created a group of people out there who, I can say from firsthand experience, are willing to do a lot for the province, to help. You just have to tap into the passion they have for Nova Scotia and understand the networks they have, and make asks to them, and they can become an amazing asset. They essentially become your foreign service for Nova Scotia. We have our foreign service as a country, but we've got a foreign service in terms of a province too that are out there, and they're just waiting to get tapped into and waiting to get asked.
It's amazing because Maritimers as a whole, and Blue Nosers, they're everywhere. They are all over the globe. I met one in Siberia, Russia one time. It's funny. My wife and I were on a date in Ireland, and we climbed the gates late at night at Clifford Moor, and we thought a security guard was coming after us, but it was a guy from Peggy's Cove. And just, it's amazing. And that I think that's so cool that you're taking that. And I agree with you. It's not necessarily a brain drain. Some of the smartest people I've worked with are the ones that are, since I've come back, and hardworking too.
Yeah.
But there is that stigmatism, or there was. I've seen such a huge change over the last 8 years. What were some of the hurdles you had to overcome by moving back?
I mean, there were a lot. I mean, the very first hurdle was even the move back. So I mean, I couldn't come back until I hit a certain number of years experience. And so that was like the absolute number one hurdle, because I would have turned around and come right back home if I could have. But at that time, you required minimum 5 to 10 to come back. So that was the first one. Some of the biggest hurdles for me coming home was I actually had reverse culture shock. And I did not expect this. I came home, and all of a sudden I felt like an outsider. I felt like
almost like a come from away, right?
I felt like I come from away, and all of a sudden I realized what an awful term that was when I was being considered a CFA. I was like, I'm not, like, I'm here, I'm ready to go. But I really found myself having to relearn being a Nova Scotian in some ways. I'd become an expat, and expats are Nova Scotians, but you've got your life of where you're living and what you're doing when you're living in Calgary or London or Toronto or wherever you might be. So yeah, honestly, the biggest thing was really getting reacclimated into the nuances of life, especially for me. I moved rural, so being in a small community. It's kind of funny. I always I think about people that move here that don't have the right last name, as some people say around here. My last name made it easy for me because I came back to the region that I'm from. But that sort of like, who's your father type of thing, which is great. But it was a hurdle for my wife, she's not from around here, and she had to come back and try to understand a new culture and everything like that. So it was quite a shift, actually.
I know exactly what you're saying. Like, I know when I moved back, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, and that reverse culture, you know, some of the things that I love about Nova Scotia is we tend to be a little easygoing,
Mhm.
but it drives me crazy too, right? Like, whatever happens, happens, right? And one of the things I love about it, and one of the things that drives me nuts as well. But I know if I can give anybody advice, I came back with my chest puffed up and thinking I was a big deal, and that doesn't work.
It doesn't, and it's such a fine dance. And for so many of us who have come back, we understand, like, it's such a fine dance, because it's true. You can't come back, and you shouldn't. It's
Yeah.
you can't come in and just throw your weight around and be like, I lived out west, I know best. That's not the truth. But you also want to bring what you learned back, right? And so for anyone moving home, it's my biggest piece of advice is find a way to have that balance. Don't just sit and be quiet. Like, you've got great experience, and we need that. Like, that outside perspective, that different way of thinking is critically important for a province that's growing as quickly as ours. And from working in international business for 5 years for the province, you said the sort of the laid back, take it easy, and that's great. I love that. It's one of the things I love about work and living here. But at the same time, it can also be a little bit of a detriment when you're working internationally. And for a lot of businesses, you have to focus globally to really scale if you're based in Nova Scotia. And the sense of urgency is required to succeed internationally. I'd hear that time and time again from the expats I worked with, or for business contacts, with like, we love that people want to take it easy, but if you don't reply in a timely manner, you lose the deal. So, it's a fine balance, delicate dance, like I say, of making sure you keep hold of what you love about the life here, while also understanding that there's different ways to do things no matter who you're working with.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that the balance, and the balance that I've seen work is work when you're at work and play when you're at play, and a lot of Maritimers are very, very good at that.
Yep.
So you've made the transition. You moved back home. You've been with BNI helping business owners, and now you've become a business owner yourself. Tell me about that process. What made the change of going from getting that constant paycheck to I'm going to go for it?
Well, I'm kind of doing both right now. I'm living in the two worlds, which is kind of exciting, because I left earlier this year. I left the government and went to Volta, the tech startup hub in Halifax, and part of that was wanting to be around faster pace, more entrepreneurial mindset, which I definitely got. And as I was doing that, I realized that I've been playing around with this LinkedIn stuff for a while, around, highlighting Nova Scotia, and the traction kept coming along. And I realized that, it's fun to do on the side, but it's also fun to do on the side with some structure. And that's where I decided, no, it's time to step up and do what I've been saying about, which is that everybody's got to, be pushing in the same direction. Everyone's got to be doing their part to help Nova Scotia. I have an avenue, and I've got the expertise that I wanted to bring to the province. So it was just one of those things that it felt right. Just sometimes it's hard to say, you just know it. It's like, I need to go for this. And that was the feeling I got. So that's when I launched Some Good Media and Entertainment. I was like, this is the time. If I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So I just hit go.
Awesome. And I want to talk more about Some Good Media, but you are a pretty big deal on LinkedIn, right? It's and that's a beast of its own. I'm on your page right now. I see you got 3,610 followers. Your posts just take off. There's one with 711 emoji likes, 182 comments that I'm looking at. Everything is just blowing off. What would a lot of people are trying to make it big on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn can be a very powerful platform. Any advice on?
Yeah, definitely some advice, because I made a post a while back where I sort of shared that I essentially had like three failed attempts at making LinkedIn work for me over the years. And the biggest thing that I learned from each of those failures was that it wasn't the authentic me. I was trying to be something. I was like, how do I craft an image of what I want to be? And it was around different focuses and everything like that. It was when I really clicked on content around Nova Scotia and building a community around celebrating Nova Scotia, it became incredibly authentic. And that authenticity really, really resonates on LinkedIn. So I mean, that's the number one thing. There's actually a guy on LinkedIn who I follow, who I think a lot of people should follow, Justin Welsh. He's got a lot of advice around that. But one of those things is like entertain people, inform people, challenge people. Those are all things that really work on LinkedIn. But you can't be talking to yourself. You got to understand who you're talking to and what they want to get from you, and then authentically bring it to them.
So authentic, be true to yourself, authentic, a little entertainment. A lot of your posts are so positive, right? Like they're grading, they're fantastic. I love them. And what was the name of the guy again that you recommended?
Justin Welch. You can find him on LinkedIn. Definitely give him a follow on there. And I don't agree with everything he says. That's the great thing is, you sometimes when you're following somebody, you're not going to agree with everything they say, but he has a lot of really good tips, especially for people that want to, kind of dabble in that solopreneur lifestyle of like, how do you create your own brand? How do you have your sort of one person business? He's got some really good stuff.
And now that you've made the transition of, being the, unofficial LinkedIn, Nova Scotia's rep here, Mr. LinkedIn, and your new business, you call it a side hustle, but I think it's going to be way more than a side hustle. I think it's got the traction to go huge. Tell me a little bit more about Some Good Media. Yeah.
Sure. So Some Good, I started really to do a couple core things. It's the primary thing is storytelling. So and that that can click with a lot of different people in terms of what storytelling is. For me, what it comes down to is from working with businesses over the last few years, I realized that there are a lot of amazing stories and amazing entrepreneurs. But if I'm going to be honest, some of the worst people at telling those stories are the entrepreneurs themselves. They're so in their business. They're so in the day to day that I think they lose the perspective of what's an amazing story about their business. And so for me, that was a really core thing, especially for small, and like my focus is small Nova Scotia based businesses, especially those in sort of like the consumer products, tourism, community building, economic development, like that type of space. That's where I want to really bring my expertise, because I think, it's easy to forget what an amazing story you have as an entrepreneur. And so sometimes you need that outside perspective to help you do that.
100%. And listen, I apologize if there's a lot of noise. There's construction going on in the back here. We're digging a big hole and a swimming pool in the backyard, and it's making a lot of noise, but
no problem.
We'll have to have you over here when it's all said and done. So, you recapping everything we chatted about, you're born way up north, born and raised here, raised in Nova Scotia, traveled all over, came back, starting your own business. What's the number one recommendation you would give someone that's starting their business, or someone that's actually has their business already but wants to get to that next level? What's the number one piece of advice you would give them?
The number one thing I always find for anyone running a business is have your people. So have the people around you that either mentors, advisors, family, whoever it might be, that are gonna help you have a different perspective on your business. I really am a big proponent of building a team of advisors around yourself, because like I say, it's one of those things that can be a lonely journey. And having people you can trust there helping you talk through things is invaluable. So if you want to go that next level, honestly, sometimes it's great to, you got to build the plan, you got to do all that kind of stuff. You really want to have a team around you, advisors and mentors that can help you get there.
The power of association is so powerful. I give financial advice for a living, but that's one of my biggest tips, is to surround yourself with those that, you want to emulate. If you want to get really good, have a really happy marriage, find someone else and just ask them how they did it. Right.
Yep.
Very good advice. Very good advice. So how do people get a hold of you? They're looking to tell their story. They want to use your services. How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I mean, the easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn. So search for Sean Meister on LinkedIn, or if you want to go right to my website, it's somegoodns.ca. Everything got there. You can email me, Sean at somegoodns.ca. Any way that you reach out to me, I'll happy to have a chat. Everything is sort of that first conversation, like, let's see if there's a fit and go from there.
Awesome. So this is one question I ask everybody, and I'm going to ask this to you too. Imagine you're heading down to Canso and you're jumping on Elon Musk spaceship. You're heading to Mars. You're going to be away for a long, long time, right? What are you doing? You can do anything the hour beforehand. Spend it with who? So what are you doing the hour beforehand? Who are you spending the time with, and what advice would you pass on to those as you're boarding the spaceship?
Oh man, that's not a deep question at all. I mean, for me, it's pretty obvious who I spend it with. It would be with my family, especially my wife and daughter. Like, that would be who I'd want to spend the time with. That's the easy part. Where? I mean, that's a tough one. It would either be on the family farm out in New Ross, or just sitting on a beach, any beach here on the South Shore, and just listening to the water and letting my daughter play on the beach. That would probably be what I'd want to do, is just to take that in. And then the advice that I would give to people, probably the biggest thing would be, find a way to see things glass half full. It's obviously, like you say, a lot of stuff on LinkedIn for me is positivity. We've got a lot of negativity around us. There's more than enough of that. It's find the positive, focus on the positive, and live in that as much as you can. That's my biggest piece of advice.
Couldn't agree with you more. Family man, obviously it's easy to see why he's LinkedIn's unofficial Nova Scotia guy. There is so much positivity out there, and yes, there's so much fear mongering as well. So I think anyone watching this can see why Sean is the financial engineers business owner of the month. And I highly recommend, if you want to get your business to that next level and get your story out there, reach out to Sean, the unofficial Nova Scotia guy, Sean Meister. Find him on LinkedIn. And what was your website again?
It's somegoodns.ca.
I really enjoyed today, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Awesome, Steve. Thanks so much. Really appreciate chatting with you.
Looking forward to doing it again.
All right. Talk to you again soon, man.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.